Picture the Valley of Sorek. Around 1100 BC, we find a woman who is entangled with a Herculean man who has slain more than 1,000 men with just the jawbone of a donkey. Divided between her nation and love, we find a woman named Delilah. And my name is Josh, and this is Inktology. Today, I'm going to be showing you a drawing that I've been working on for some time, and the materials like these pencils and the type of paper, erasers, and everything you would need to do a drawing like this. And take a story that's as old as time and look at it from a different perspective, from Delilah's perspective. And every once in a while I will stop to do a small tip about the drawing and what I'm doing. Right now I'm going to do Samson at the bottom right here. He's not the main focus, but I want him to be eyeing Delilah, who's the center. Delilah's story starts off really in the book of Judges, chapter 16, verse 4, after Samson has visited another woman, didn't work out, took some doors off something and ran up a hill. That's his story, and we'll get to that in another video. But I'm going to start reading from verse 4 on about Delilah. After this, he fell in love with a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. The lords of the Philistines came to her and said to her, "Coax him and find out what makes his strength so great, and how we may overpower him, so that we may bind him in order to subdue him, and we will each give you 1,100 pieces of silver." And a quick tip, when drawing out your faces, you can use all these different angles to help build proportions, and that's what I'm doing here with building out Samson's face. I wanted him kind of like eyeing the door, knowing that the Philistines were coming through to kill him, but he also didn't care. But I also wanted to show more expression of his dissatisfaction with Delilah. And this angle of the side profile didn't seem to work. So shortly you're going to see that I turned the face more towards me so that he looks less concerned about things but still angry. Oh, and another tip. If you want to see more of this kind of content of me drawing and explaining mythology, religion, and fantasy characters, please don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. That'll be awesome and help me as an artist grow. Okay, now let's continue with the story of Delilah. So Delilah said to Samson, "Please tell me what makes your strength so great, and how you could be bound, so that one could subdue you." Samson said to her, "If they bind me with 7 fresh bowstrings that are not dried out, then I shall become weak and be like anyone else." Then the lords of the Philistines brought her 7 fresh bowstrings that were not dried out, and she bound him with them. While men were laying in wait in an inner chamber, she said to him, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson." But he snapped the bowstrings as a strand of fiber snaps when it's touched with fire. So the secret of his strength was not known. Then Delilah said to Samson, "You have mocked me and told me lies. Please tell me how you could be bound." He said to her, "If they bind me with new ropes that have not been used, then I'll become weak, and I'll be like anyone else." So Delilah took new rope and bound him with them, and said to him, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson." The men lying in wait were in an inner chamber, but he snapped the ropes off his arms like a thread. Then Delilah said to Samson, "Until now you have mocked me and told me lies. Tell me how you could be bound." He said to her, "If you weave the 7 locks of my head with the web and make it tight with the pin, then I shall become weak and be like anyone else." So while he slept, Delilah took the 7 locks of his head and wove them into the web and made them tight with the pin. Then she said to him, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson." But he woke from his sleep and pulled away the pin, the loom, and the web. Then she said to him, "How can you say, 'I love you,' when your heart is not with me? You have mocked me 3 times now and have not told me what makes your strength so great." Finally, after she had nagged him with her words day after day and pestered him, he was tired to death. So he told her his whole secret and said to her, "A razor has never come upon my head, for I have been a Nazarite to God from my mother's womb. If my head were shaved, then my strength would leave me. I would become weak and be like anyone else." When Delilah realized that he had told her his whole secret, she went and called the lords of the Philistines, saying, "This time come up, for he has told his whole secret to me." Then the lords of the Philistines came up to her and brought the money in their hands. She let him fall asleep on her lap, and she called a man and had him shave off the 7 locks of his head. He began to weaken and his strength left him. Then she said, "The Philistines are upon you, Samson." When he awoke from his sleep, he thought, "I will go out as the other times and shake myself free." But he did not know that the Lord had left him. So the Philistines seized him and gouged out his eyes. They brought him down to Gaza and bound him with bronze shackles. And he ground at the mill in the prison. And that's what we hear of Delilah. That's the end of her story and where she's mentioned. The rest goes on to talk about how Samson gets his revenge eventually on the Philistines and takes them all down by pushing 2 pillars and killing thousands. But for Delilah, she has such an interesting role to play and being purchased for this information and actually being paid for it. And her being okay, as well as even Samson himself being okay with this information being known. Imagine where Delilah lived, in the rolling hills, vineyards, Philistine trade routes weaving through the land, here between Israelite highlands and Philistine plains, whose name Delilah, possibly from the Hebrew root dalal, means to weaken or bring low. And what might not be so apparent is that her parents probably named her this to fulfill prophecy, as it would be bringing the strongest man of the Nazarites to his lowest. Oh, and quick tip, this Deleter Black 4 ink has a few issues I'm not a fan of. You can see that there's a shine, a shimmer, because it kind of layers on. I was looking for more of a matte finish. This stuff, if applied incorrectly, can, give that shine where it's not wanted. Now I'm starting to put in all the details and really fill out the finishing parts of the inking process, which I enjoy the most because it just kind of brings the image together. But let's get back to Delilah. She wasn't royalty or prophetess or a soldier. She was just a woman of the borderlands. She wasn't a Philistine even, possibly, because, this omission of her being no part of any tribe, not named as any tribe, doesn't technically make her a Philistine. She may just be doing business with the Philistines. And Delilah's valley was politically tense. As Jody Magnus points out, Philistine and Israelite settlements in the region often clashed, but also exchanged culture, trade, and even gods. People here weren't enemies, they were neighbors under lots of pressure. And archaeology at Tel Zorah and Beth Shemesh confirms this. Fortified towns, mixed pottery styles, and shared roads suggest like a cultural blur. And the next inking tip I have, you can see that I'm drawing these lines and I'm applying different amounts of pressure, but it's important to know how much pressure you're doing because some create different values in the ink, as you see here, and they have fibers on this paper, so you could be pulling up and ripping the paper. And you just want to know how the pen is going to react. Now here you can see I've done a deep cut. Now this is where I'm just tearing the paper because of that metal that I'm doing here, or pressing too hard. So when using a dip pen, there's a learning curve, but it really produces a really consistent of inconsistencies in the ink, which are quite nice. And you can see some hairs at the tip of my pen to show where the fibers come off if you don't clean your pen often and take care of it. Now, many of us may know the story of Samson, but if you don't, he's a divine chosen judge who is born in Zorah. He's a Nazarite from the womb, which means he has certain rules he has to follow, like not cutting his hair and drinking and such. And he's blessed with amazing strength and haunted by his impulse for lust and beauty. And we may see a lot of art of Samson tearing up a lion or fighting a lion or pushing down pillars and, being a super Hercules kind of character. But I think there should be much more of Delilah because this brute of a man is said to be in love with this woman from the Valley of Sorek, Delilah. There was no marriage, no covenant, just something special. And Bart D. Ehrman reminds us that the Bible isn't a court transcript. It's like a memory shaped by theology, politics, and fear. And Samson's story with Delilah is crafted in a celebration of Israel's strength and, a more complicated role for her. And as we see, the Philistine lords offered Delilah silver to uncover Samson's secret. He terrorized the Philistines, and they were very much afraid of him because he could pretty much go and choose women at his will. So this kind of secret to know how to take him down was worth a fortune, a price easily to be paid for wealth or freedom, perhaps. And the thing is that she asks 3 times. He lies each time. But on the 4th, he tells her, "No razor has touched my head. If it is cut, my strength will leave me." He didn't whisper it, he confessed it. And some scholars believe Samson wanted to fall, that he saw Delilah as a release from war, from prophecy, from divine expectation. And he told her the truth because maybe he was just tired, or maybe he just wasn't that intelligent. Either way, Delilah now has this information that could do so much for the narrative and does. And as he's asleep, she cuts his hair, and then they came and they blinded him, and he didn't scream. And why was blinding important? That's because his eyes are really what led him to find all these women and be lustful. And this is kind of a judgment call on a theological perspective of the way Israel was treating God and the kind of the moral system that they wanted to upkeep. And he failed it miserably. But without eyes, he can still accomplish God's will. And as Samson is being dragged away to his imprisonment, Delilah is no longer mentioned. She takes the money and she kind of disappears. Now, she may be a tool for the literature and the creation of this story, but I like to think that if she ever did exist, the woman must have been marvelously beautiful to captivate the strongest man in Israel's history and absolutely allow her to try to kill him multiple times, 3 times before the 4th one was the final capture. And that love must have been much more than just an idiotic kind of emotional, love. It wasn't like the other women. There was something much more present there. And maybe she disappeared because she did love him back and didn't know how to deal with this, but maybe there was a threat from the Philistines to, harm her in some way. We don't know these things, but the story can be there, and it's beautiful to play with this kind of creativity of who she was and what she did for work. And though Delilah may be claimed to be the villain of the story, she's more like the cost of prophecy, of power, of patriarchy, and, all these things we may not see in this culture. And in 2012, archaeologists found a lion seal at Beth Shemesh depicting a man wrestling a lion. And it could be a folk memory of Samson, possibly and dated in about the right era. But unfortunately, there are no items ever mentioning Delilah. But remains from Sorek Valley tell her story in another way, like oil presses, clay ovens, storage jars, mud brick homes. The kind of hints at what kind of woman she was and how she lived. So who was Delilah? We may not really ever know, but I like to imagine her as someone who had a great fashion sense, who was beautiful to look at, and probably the prettiest thing in town for Samson to be eyeing her and fall in love with her. Or maybe she was a great cook, But is she a temptress? Is she a traitor? Or just a woman caught between gods? And my favorite part, the ending of the story, when Samson pulls down the temples. Was she there or was she not? And a quick tip with your dip pens to help them flow smoothly and not get clogged at the tips with the ink, because it will dry out and just layer. Use like a wet paper towel or a piece of cloth is better to get it off and clean it and get it ready, or just switch out the tips. And there's probably more to her story, since we have archaeological excavations and biblical geography like Zorah, Eshtaol, and Timnah, and Gaza as actual representing cities, and that we know that those people existed. So this isn't a full-on tale of fantasy, but has some roots in history. So was she a real person or Samson? We may never know. But it is great to think about these people sometimes as very real, like you and I, and see where we can go into their story and figure out, would we have made the same choices? Would we have sold out this guy? Was he a good guy? It doesn't really explain, but it does show he was impulsive and did not really have a care for women as we may see women today. And these are really just fascinating ways for the stories to engulf us with wisdom and new ideas and creativity. And I hope that you enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. That'll definitely help me out. But also, yeah, leave your comments down below if you think of different things about Delilah and her story and what could have been. If there's other archaeological or historical validations to her existence, how does that change her story and narrative? And what do we know about the Philistines and these sea people? They were culturally advanced and had persuasion, had access to money to just give for something like this. What was the political tension between them and Samson and Delilah? We may never know, but it's fun exploring. This is my drawing of Delilah and Samson, and you're watching Mythology.